particularly now in this AI kind of overwhelming world online, people want authentic content. So that's what really drives clicks, is authentic content. So it's creating the strategies that you can use to create authentic content.
It's a Titan's Tale time today, and this is Chris G here, and we're going to have a Titan that's going to share his experiences. I was impressed with the fact that he's been traveling around the world. He's a business journalist, actually, when he actually started out with, and that was in Times, Fortune Magazine, and Forbes, and I'm sure some other ones as well, but those are the three that I kind of dear to my heart. And he's also an author, a keynote speaker, and a business consultant. So please help me join. Actually, he started out in Canada, but he's a Canadian, but lives in Portugal. Nicholas Bruneau. Welcome, Nicholas.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
This is fun. I was looking at your history and all the places you've been. Can you give us a little history about you and what you've done in your life?
Yeah. I come from I'm a diplomat's son, so I was always traveling anyways. So even when I was a little kid, like every 3 or 4 years, we're used to moving around. And then I guess it stuck with me, because then I ended up working as a business journalist and also always moving around. And then eventually I sort of realized, well, I have to settle down somewhere for a little bit longer than 2 or 3 years. And then so I started working at The Economist in London, in the UK, and then ended up working with their office in Brussels, and working a lot with European clients there. And then so that so that got me all into the digital marketing and digital communications side of things. And I decided that I would go out on my own and start working as a consultant, and then the rest is history. So that was just over 10 years ago, and so now gradually evolving in that area myself.
You're definitely a Titan. Has some tales to tell. When we're entrepreneurs, we're obviously, and with the digital world, we're able to work now from anywhere. And the many places you've been to, I know you live in Portugal, but is there any places you actually prefer to go to or like to visit or vacation there and then still work, but be able to come home later?
Yeah. The good thing about working from home is that you can, for example, now when I want to spend time with my parents, I'm able to go there, not just to see them, but also to work from Canada. So I go and spend some time, 2 or 3 weeks with my parents. So I think it's great to be able to do that, and to be able to, if I want to, for example, go abroad and have a kind of a business holiday kind of experience, and that's also possible. So I think that's one of the advantages of being able to work remotely. Of course, sometimes time zones are a bit of an issue, but usually, anyways, I work with U.S. clients. So going anywhere in Canada or the U.S. is great for me.
Sure. And then we talked earlier, you're a solopreneur, but started in, what did you say, 2013? Is that right? Somewhere there?
Yeah. So just about 12 years ago.
Yeah. What did you see a need, or what caused you to want to go out on your own?
Yeah, I was when I was at The Economist, I was working still. We're doing a lot of print products, and it was still like a print newspaper. And I saw the writing on the wall, essentially, that digital was taking over more and more of our business. So our print revenues were going down, and then the digital revenues were slowly going up, but not as much as they could. So I saw an opportunity there, and I thought that it was the right time to specialize in digital. So I actually quit my job and decided to do a digital. I had already had a marketing degree, but to get a digital marketing degree, and so I did that. And then after that, I started looking for work in digital comms and digital marketing, but I wasn't able to find anything. So I was a little bit what I guess you could call a reluctant entrepreneur, in the fact that I wasn't able to find something that I was excited about. And so little by little, I started to try to create my own job. I think some people, they think, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, but some other people, they do it, like myself, kind of just because there don't seem to be any options. So some people will do it for a short period of time, but for me, it's been something that progressively, I've been able to sort of think, well, actually, maybe I am an entrepreneur. But it was a gradual process. So I think it's, having that mind shift, it takes a long time. So for me, it was a couple of years before I really kind of said, well, actually, I'm okay with that. It's sort of because I think that very often we kind of associate ourselves with our employer. The first thing that people ask sometimes is, what do you do? Where do you work? And you kind of define yourself, right, with that organization. So when I was at The Economist, it was great, or when I was working with Forbes or Fortune, it's like, you're quite proud to say you work for one of these well-known newspapers. So all of a sudden I was like, well, who am I? It's like, I'm just Nicholas Bruneau. So I think it's building up that brand as well. And then after that, being proud of that, being able to say, I'm Chris Gilman, and this is what I do, for example, and this is, it's not just, I think once you build that brand, then you're able to be a little bit more confident about working on your own.
So you quit your job and went and got a degree. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I already had my
Yeah.
degree in marketing.
Right.
Then I
But you
got
got
a
digital.
specialization in digital marketing. And that was,
So that-
I mean, things move so quickly that, it's, since I had my degree, maybe like, 10 years before, then after that, it was important sort of, to get the latest.
Sure. Well, that degree didn't teach you how to be an entrepreneur, right? It just basically taught you about the digital side of marketing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So did you have a mentor, or did you read any books or anything like that to help you make that transition to be an entrepreneur? Or did you just kind of wing it and it kind of fell into place?
I was a little bit lucky in the fact that when I was in Belgium, there was a program called Job Yourself, which helped young entrepreneurs that were on unemployment insurance, that helped them to sort of to create their own job. So they gave training, they gave assistance, and so that we were able to do a peer-to-peer exchange as well. So you not only had a mentor, but you also had kind of peer-to-peer exchanges with other people that were starting their own business.
Like a mastermind?
A little bit, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it really helped, because we were able to exchange kind of like our challenges, and also motivate each other and see, how to overcome, these problems that we're facing. So it was really helpful.
One of the purposes of a Titan's Tale, to share those experiences like yourself. Now, you had mentioned to me that you specialize in nonprofits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was this like a nonprofit association that did that, or was it a government thing? What kind of group sponsored that?
Yeah, I mean, I started working when I was in Brussels with associations and nonprofits, just because there was a need there for a lot of them to engage online with their stakeholders. And so little by little, I started working with one, then another, and then it grew. So it was, I think it was initially something where you see that there's a need, and then you start to develop that expertise, I would say, in that need. And it wasn't initially like in a specific sector per se, so not in the like pharmaceutical sector, or not in a specific area, but more in that area, like nonprofits or intergovernmental organizations.
Is a nonprofit, now I know you do the government thing as well, we'll talk about that a little bit here, and then just the regular I guess, for-profit organizations, whether it be an individual company or a bigger group? Is there differences, or how do you intertwine, and how do you? There's also crossover, but there's
Mhm.
differences as well, right? Like a profit versus a nonprofit in the marketing world. How's that different?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, a lot there are going to be a lot of similarities as far as the top of funnel activity that you're doing. So when I mean top of funnel, I mean when people are, when you're trying to get to know them. So using content marketing, for example, for people
Hmm.
to get to know you, and different kinds of strategies to gain their interest and to get people more active with your organization or your company, and to get to know your products or get to know what you do. And so that is, I think it's quite constant. So whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit organization and company, of course, a company will try to go even further and have a, you know, a business to consumer a pipeline in which, you know, they have a perhaps a product to sell. So that's an area where I haven't had any expertise as far as having that specific, trying to sort of drive specific business with digital marketing. But I have worked, for example, I worked with Owens Corning on when I was in Brussels. And they, if you know Owens Corning, they are, I mean, they're known for the insulation that they make for housing. But I was working for the composites division. So the composites division is basically, they will make the composites for cars or wind turbines. So they'll manufacture the raw products, and so it's more of a B2B sell. But what they wanted was they wanted to increase their visibility at trade shows, for example. So we developed a strategy, a digital marketing strategy, so that when they go to trade shows, they're creating conversations before the trade show, during the trade show, and after. So it's a whole content marketing approach where we were developing their activity online, so that when they arrive at the trade show, they've already got engagement with a lot of people that are going to the trade show, and they already have content that people have seen before they go to the event. So it was a, you know, a whole strategy which I think worked really well. And that can be, you know, it's the same for a nonprofit, like I said, that will also want to sort of get people to know them before they go to an event, for
Before they ever
example.
show up.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the call to action? Stop by the booth, or was there some other creative things in advance to get them revved up?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to talk about key issues that were important for that industry. So if we talked about, for example, the car industry, how to have a lighter car, and what are the kind of the issues. So to create content that will be interesting for that audience, so that that'll pique their interest, and then
Hmm.
they'll want to then go to the booth and find out more.
How does that contrast with a government entity that you could consult with?
So a government entity will be trying to create interesting content that will look at new trends, and then using those trends to bring it back to sort of the key issue that they are advocating for. So if you have, you know,
Like their agenda that they're trying to
yeah, yeah,
pass or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I worked for the Global Partnership for Education, we,
Hmm.
of course, they're an education fund that is hosted by the World Bank, and they fund education programs around the world. So what we were doing is we were showing, when I was working with them, this was just after the pandemic, or actually during the pandemic, we were showing them the issues that children were having to go to school during the pandemic, and how, you know, organizations and companies could help improve that, whether it's through different teleworking or even funding. So different ways in which children need support, or education systems needed more support. So creating stories as well. So interviewing students, interviewing teachers. So to try to show what's happening on the ground, and then from that, then raising interest from policymakers or stakeholders or donors to get more involved. So it's creating kind of a content pipeline that will really sort of engage with your target audience.
Now, some of my listeners may say, well, I want to work with government entities. How, as you're an entrepreneur, how did you go about getting those type of clients? Is it easier? I mean, they have budgets and so forth, or who do you contact, or getting your foot in the door? How's that work on the government side?
I mean, I think it's trying to first, of course, to find out what are the calls for proposals. So when they need someone, so that's obviously, I think the easiest thing is to see, okay, when there's a short-term contract, what are the opportunities for, and there are opportunities that people will post on LinkedIn, for example, require certain skill. So I think it's, I always say first, as a business, as a business or an entrepreneur, it's having your niche, and then once you have that niche, very well defined, is finding, who are your key clients, and then if that following and engaging with those clients, so that whenever they're posting something or they have a specific need, then you're able to respond to that need. And then, of course, if there's always the possibility of trying to be more proactive and trying to, I suppose, approach them and to try to sort of have if you have a specific product, to try to sort of show them how that product could help them, and to have a kind of a consultative point of view. So I really believe in the consultative sales approach, where you first get to know what the client's pain points are, what their challenges are, and then you offer them a solution, right? As opposed to sort of saying, here, look at me, and you should buy my product because it's great. So when you're at that level, when you're trying to sort of, I guess, quote unquote, sell to a government entity, it's really first developing that relationship. And then from that, then you're able to understand who they are and what you could perhaps do together in the short or medium term. So yeah.
Well, being a business journalist or journalist in general, it's I guess an evolutionary step that you become an author, and you wrote a book, Engage with Impact. We're going to talk about it in just a minute here, but I wanted to, I guess, lead into that book. So you talked about checking on social media for that entity, and it could be not necessarily a business entity, it could be that nonprofit, could be your B2B, could be your current customer or a person. But it's not only important to look at their social media, but it's also important for you to have social media content, right?
Mm-hmm.
The niche you're trying to develop, what you're talking about. Is that what your book's about? Somewhat?
I mean, the book it's first, what I kind of realized, and this comes back to just after the pandemic, I did a survey of just about 250 marketing and communications managers, asking them how the pandemic had changed the way that they communicate. And about over 80% of them said that it helped them to be more agile. And why is that? Because all of a sudden they had to change the way that they were communicating. Everything had to be online. They had to learn new tools. All our events were all online. So you had to learn. So I was part of I was actually hired to do the first UN, United Nations Environmental Program webinar, like their annual events for like thousands of people. So we had to do it all online. It used to be in person, right? And
Right.
so we were learning with a new platform, and we were learning as we were going. So all to say that I think the idea was from the book was that things are changing. The way that we communicate is changing, and people are having to be more creative. They're having to learn new things because digital is moving so quickly. So the tools, the strategies, and the platforms are changing so quickly that it's really hard to keep up. So we really have to move and always keep learning. So that's why I think what the crux of the book is, I talk about an agile framework, which is a 5-step framework. So first, it's adopting a startup mentality. It's, thinking on your feet and learning and collaborating and being quicker to act, right? And then the second one is go digital first. It's essentially adopting all the tools so that internally you can create content faster and you can be more responsive, right? And then for that, you have to change the way that you communicate. So everybody talks about authenticity. It was actually the most searched word in 2023. And it's because particularly now in this AI kind of overwhelming world online, people want authentic content. So that's what really drives clicks, is authentic content. So it's creating the strategies that you can use to create authentic content. And then after that, it's leveraging that content. So I think we all have a limited amount of time. How do you leverage that content? How do you repurpose all your content? So for example, this podcast, how are you repurposing it? And how are you then using it across different platforms, as a blog, as short form videos, in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. And then finally, how can you then have a ripple effect and connect with your community? So how can you empower your community and then use different tools and strategies to do that? So that's the Agile framework in a nutshell, that the book is trying to really help you to scale online all your activities.
Let's go back to the authenticity part of it. And one of my thoughts was, well, how does people tell if it's authentic or not? And I'm assuming video makes a bigger difference, say, than copy, because sometimes copy, you can't tell if it's an AI or not. And maybe someday it will be difficult to tell if it's an AI video or not. But for right now, I assume it's like communications between you and me. I'm here, you're there. That's authentic versus something made up, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Absolutely.
Or made up in fact, it's something you, it came from the heart, I guess, but I was listening to an 80s song the other day, but straight from the heart type thing. It's really authentic. It's you. It's not something intending to be you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a concrete example in the book. And actually, this comes from another podcast, which is called the Stories and Strategies podcast. But they interviewed a communications manager in Alberta that was leading the fight against the forest fires. So he was working directly with all of the forest fires, rapid action force, and the firefighters and the whole teams there. Mm-hmm. And on one hand, they tried to do these, beautifully scripted videos with professional cameras and all these things. But what worked? What worked was the guy with his cell phone in the middle of a fire, showing really, exactly what, showing really the difficulties he was going through, the frustrations, and basically, the danger that he was going through. That's what really worked. And that's what got people's attention. So it's getting away from that scripted, perfect video and then trying to have something that is really authentic in the way that you can really connect with that person.
So how do you leverage that then? You talk about leveraging. You mean leveraging is in putting it on different platforms, taking it and repurposing it? What's your kind of your version or definition of leveraging?
Yeah, it's trying to sort of create some systems that allow you to easily and quickly create video. So you can be, for example, if in your company, it can be maybe setting up a small booth where people can do videos on the fly, and it's already all set up, a soundproof booth with all the different camera and different tools to allow you to have your employees to be able to speak on camera, for example. Another one is to then have something where on the go you have a good mic a good and perhaps a gimbal or something that allows you to really do some video quickly when you're on the move, and then to then also, try to have different kinds of formulas that allow you to tell the story that is going to be more than just like, here I am, like outside doing a visit with the client, but actually trying to have a bit of a storytelling approach. So you're talking about, well, here I am, but I have a challenge, and this is an issue I'm dealing with, and this is how I'm, trying to overcome that challenge, and follow me for more, etc. So I think these are kind of ways in which you're showing, how human you are, how how you're really overcoming something, and you're trying to build up something. So it's a little bit like the condensed version of the hero's journey, like the Star Wars kind of like, here I'm trying to go and fight evil and things like that, but on a business side. So it's trying to adopt those storytelling strategies and having that ingrained in the communications that you do. So it's not just like, here we are and we're so great because of this, but actually there's a good story from the writers of Beavis and Butthead, the show
Yeah.
Beavis and Butthead.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes,
the writers, basically they said, whenever we write a story, it has to have either but or however in the sentence, because if there isn't something like that, so that if there isn't sort of a contradiction or a challenge, so that's where the but and however come in, then it's just boring. If it's just, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing that, then it's not exciting. But if I'm saying I'm doing this, but I have this issue, however, that's what that's what I could be doing, then you have a kind of this progression where it becomes interesting. So that's what all the Beavis and Butthead stories are all like that, and that's what they realized. That's how you get people's attention.
you got me on the Beavis, but I had a question. Now I'm done. Throw my Beavis and Butthead got excited there. I can always revert to a story. Do you have a story of success that you've actually it worked out where somebody came to you, consulted, and then well, it's like night and day difference. Anything like that?
Oh, you mean like a super duper success story kind of thing?
Yeah, super duper success story.
Got to think about that one. I mean, I sort of right now I'm working with the UN, and
Okay.
a lot of people. This is a small program. It's called Data for Now, and very few people knew about it. And it was, and so what we did is I put together some workshops so that we could work internally and teach people how to tell stories. And so these storytelling workshops allowed them to dig deeper and to find ways to tell stories about all the different projects that they're doing. And so we've just published those stories, and now we're already getting feedback that it's people are reading it, and they're understanding what we do. So because before we just had a website that talked about what we did, but we didn't have the stories. So now they can really visualize what we're doing and the kind of impact we're having. So that was, something that we put together, and now sort of I'm rolling that out also with other groups as well.
Now that I got Beavis and Butthead off my mind, I thought of the question. So we were talking about you talk about stories and so forth. And when you tell a story, I was instructed that you should always tell a story and then try to find out the meaning, the learning process after their story. The story is they're going to catch them, but then you might have to pull the idea out. Is when you teach people to tell stories, what do you give me an example of how you would tell that person to tell a story in the like your Beavis and Butthead where you got the but and the however, or is it like Star Wars where you've got the hero and then you got the journey and then at the end here it is. There's different ways of telling stories. I'm assuming.
There, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
And I completely confuse you with what I asked.
Sure, sure. I mean, one example would be the founder story. So if you want to tell the founder story about, um, you know, I think you always have to look at, here's the normal.
Hmm.
This is what I was like before. And then I had, so if you look at that sort of that curve, then I had a challenge, and then I had an epiphany as to how I could solve that challenge.
Right.
And then you move up to the new normal. So then you always have to go from a normal, which is where things, and then you go to there, and then there's a challenge or in the case of Star Wars, it's a fight for good, and then after that it's the new normal. So it's the same with like the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings,
Hmm.
where Bilbo is basically, he's very happy in the Shire, and he doesn't necessarily want to go on this big trip, but he's obliged to do it. He's obliged to go on this quest. So it's going on this quest where you're looking for a solution, and then you find the solution, and after that you reach kind of like a new level. So that's the typical hero's journey story, but
Right.
anyone can kind of adopt it. Yeah, I think in a way that you can talk about, this was a challenge I had to deal with, and this is, what I learned from it, for example.
There are a lot of different platforms out there, obviously today. Facebook, which is the big one, but you know, there's competitors like TikTok. YouTube could be considered a platform that's a competitor to Facebook.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sure there's Instagram and there's Snapchat and I'm sure there's other ones I'm not even thinking of because I don't even. I'm just happy with one or two. Oh, LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Those are the big ones. When you do your content and you talk about leveraging, do you leverage your content for all those types, or do you really focus just on one of them?
Mhm.
What's your opinion?
First, I think visualize, okay, which are the ones that are important for me. So you try to tier them. So for me, for example, it will be LinkedIn, but someone else, it may be Instagram, depending on their business. Having said that, I think it's always good to think ahead as to how you're going to then use that content. So if, for example, now with this podcast, the idea is that you want to be able to get the right content that, or get the video that will then allow you to do shorts and allow you to do a transcript that will allow you to then do a blog. But then if you've thought far ahead, and let's say you want to write a book eventually, let's say you, Chris, you want to write a book about, a Titan's Tale, for example,
Hmm.
and you've already thought about the kind of book you want, and you've already put together the topics and the outline of your book, then actually what you're going to do is you're going to interview the people that are going to help you to build the content for that book. So you're thinking ahead even before you've started creating the content. And what happens is a lot of people, they do the other way around, and then it's very difficult. So they may do a lot of interviews or a lot of content, but then in the end they try to let's say they decide to write a book, then they have to start all over again because they haven't sort of planned that beforehand. So that's the whole idea of repurposing. The whole idea of having a repurposing mindset is trying to think ahead at least two steps ahead, where you're not only thinking about how can I repurpose this content, but how will this content then have an impact later on in my business, so that I can sort of progress and have something that I can use in different kinds of formats.
I used to think that if you put it on too many platforms, and there's more today than obviously there was, but it got watered down. But I guess it's not really watered down because it's different strategies and it's different. Even though it's the same content, it's um, delivered a different way. And in theory, you're dealing with different people, so they don't know maybe necessarily that it's on LinkedIn, or they don't know it's necessarily on a different platform, unless they just happen to be following you and everything. But they don't know, so it's still fresh to them. And they don't realize it's not really watered down. Is that accurate?
It is, and I completely agree that sometimes we feel like we're repeating ourselves, um, but that's not the case if it's on different platforms. Sometimes it's also good to repeat yourself because then you showcase, I'm an expert in this, I'm an expert so you really reinforce when that niche and that expertise. There are, however, some platforms that maybe are not going to be helpful for you. So I think the idea is to test out. So there's a good example as well in my book of a nonprofit called Candid that wanted to experiment with short form videos. So they said, okay, um, we we'd like to try short form videos, but we don't know where and what kind of videos we should be doing. But we
Hmm.
don't want it to overwhelm us. So what they did is they did a controlled experiment where they decided we're going to spend only 20% of our time and we're going to do 3 videos or 4 videos a week. And we're going to post on different platforms, on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. We're going to see what we're going to follow and measure and see which ones are performing best. And to map that according to the platform, according to the content, the duration, the type of video, all these kinds of things allowed them afterwards, because they were doing it as an experiment, allowed them to then refine the type of content that they want to be doing in the longer term. So it allowed them to see, for example, in their case, YouTube Shorts was actually getting more engagement than TikTok and Instagram, which was a surprise for them. So that helped them to see that perhaps their audience is more active on YouTube than they are on TikTok. Or maybe it just means that on a long-term basis, maybe they have to spend more time growing that audience on TikTok, which is maybe what they are doing now. So it allows you, if you take kind of that approach where you're having an experimental approach, it allows you to see what works and what doesn't for your audience, because everyone is going to be different. One organization and one company is going to have complete different success rates on different platforms because their audience is also different, and yeah, it's not a black and white kind of thing. So you have to experiment, and so that's why I kind of say you have to sort of also be open to failure. You also have to be open to sort of sometimes, as long as you're going to learn from it, to doing things and failing once in a while. So that's why in the book I even talk about, I don't know if you heard about this series of events called fuck up nights. So they're entrepreneurs that they get together and they talk about their fuck ups. They talk about
Nights as in KNIGHT, or
sorry,
like fighting nights,
no,
KNI, or nights as in,
it's a fuck up nights.
oh, so it's just night as in nighttime,
Or
and they're
no,
just telling
it's
stories.
yeah, a fuck up events. So it's their fuck up.
Gotcha. Yep.
So it's basically how they learned from their mistakes.
Uh-huh.
And because I think we always talk about our successes, but we don't talk enough about our mistakes. So this
True.
event series kind of like tries to help people to talk about that, and so that we're open to it and we can learn from them.
Interesting. Where would somebody find that at? Like online?
Yeah. I think it's fuckupnights.com or something like that.
.com or
It
something like that?
started
Okay.
in Mexico, but it's international now.
Well, Nicholas Bruno, and I want everybody to know that it's not it's spelled Bruneau, not like how I say it. But Nicholas, how would we get in contact with you if somebody wanted to reach out?
Well, I mean, it's very easy for the book. It's engagewithimpact.com. So there you'll have an overview of the book. And also you have a free download for the agile framework, which gives you an overview of what I was talking about, how you can be more nimble and more responsive online.
And as always, and I like to say this, you can always find information down below in the show notes, as well as go to titanstail.com find Nicholas and all the other great guests there. Bruno, Bruneau, and that is it. Oh, also I forgot. Almost this is something new to me, Nick. We have to I gotta tell the fact that if you want to reach out and talk to Chris, then also go to the show notes. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, um, oh LinkedIn. That's my favorite one. And reach out to me. Well, and also YouTube. That's a new one we just added. So anyway, we're always available out here at Titan's Tail. Thank you, Nick. This is good to go. And you are a true Titan.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Bye bye.